Live. My hair today is just not cooperating, and it's fine. It's very hot outside. Again, it's like, I'm sure how hot it is exactly. I think it's like 80. It's not nearly as hot as it was like a couple weeks ago. It is 90 degrees. That makes sense. That makes sense. How is everyone doing? Well, what's going on? Yes, hello indeed. I don't know if excited's the right word. I'm looking forward to this discussion we're going to have. The focus, normally I don't really do themed live streams. I kind of just do whatever. We just chat, hang out, have a good time. Sometimes it's all BDSM, sometimes it's poly, sometimes it's ace stuff. It really just depends. And this time, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of focus on the rope bondage as the topic because I just published a video that has been, I cannot emphasize this enough, a really, really long time coming. It has been something I worked on originally at the very end of June, and then I kept editing it and researching and consulting and finding more things to look at, and just, it was a really big project, and I did finally get it done, put it out today, and just because of how much detail is in there, I thought maybe it would be a good idea to like have a little bit of a conversation around what I talked about. If there's any questions, any thoughts, any ideas, anything related to bondage that you guys maybe would want to talk about, we can get into that, and that's kind of what I had in mind. I'm also trying something new with like OBS today. I didn't realize you could use LUTs, which are like they're like Snapchat filters, but for video. I didn't realize you could use LUTs in OBS. So we're trying a little bit of a fade filter today. It's not really the one that I would want to have, but it is one, and I thought we would just see how it looks. But yeah, this video was like such a process to make, and of course, the last edit I did, I have uploaded it and like tested it a few times, and this final last version I did, which had a lot more examples of people in bondage, like in photos and stuff, that one for some reason made the video age restricted, even though it wasn't before. When I've always had like the video and the photos from the original topic that we discussed in there, but for some reason one of the additional photos I added as like a counter example made it age restricted. So it's like YouTube, which the problem with age restriction is the way that YouTube handles things is that age gating stuff doesn't just mean that only people who have accounts that are set younger than 18 can't see it. It also means it doesn't get promoted. It doesn't get pushed out in the algorithm. It's less often to appear, like it's less common for it to show up in people's like subscription boxes. It's less common for it to be recommended. So it's like, this is a really important subject, and like YouTube is like not happy about it, which is so funny because like I make videos about Marilyn Manson and those very rarely get age restricted, but like I show a video talking about rope bondage and then like that one's not okay. Super weird how that works. I can literally say, talk about anti-Semitism and sexual assault and whatever else, and YouTube's like, that's fine, we're not gonna age restrict that. And then like this one video I'm like, hey, look, this is how to do rope bondage safely, and they're like, no, we hate that, it's bad. And I also had to put all of the sources for the video and like resources and recommended educational websites. I had to put that in like Pastebin, I think, or something like that. It's one of those websites where you can make like a source list. Usually people get around it or use it because it helps you get around the character limit in a YouTube description, so you can put all of your sources in there and not have to worry about kind of leaving some out because you literally don't have enough room. However, YouTube has recently decided to start dinging things when I have links to sources that have nudity in them. Their AI's ability to tell nudity apart from, lingerie or like non-nude BDSM containing images is not that great. So like it's literally a photo of like a fully clothed couple in a bed, and it's an article talking about tickling, and they're like, that contains nudity, and it's like, well, it doesn't. So in order to avoid kind of making YouTube mad, I had to put the sources somewhere else. So anyways, it's a whole project. That's sort of the background of the video. It's been a long time coming, and I hope that it's good for something. All right, let's get into some questions. Thank you guys so much for waiting for this. I did try to give everyone a heads up that this was like happening, because I mean, I always live stream on Fridays at 6, but you know, not everybody knows that, and that's okay. Sometimes we just don't know. We don't always catch every live stream. I also publish this video much later than I normally do. I feel like that might be part of it as well, is just 5 p.m. is kind of a dicey time for a video on a Friday, you know? And I also think like YouTube, from what I know from like other YouTubers, like views and engagement have been down just because like things are opening back up again. More people are spending time outside with other human beings, not watching YouTube videos all day. And so like that's also like part of it as well. Which, if people can go outside safely and have fun and not just like watch me talk about Marilyn Manson all day, like that's fine with me. Anyways. Know how to say Steve super glue the knots. Well, that's the thing though. I think that was like a silly comment. I'm gonna answer it kind of seriously, which is, I think people have this idea that like shibari is all like knots, right? And you get these people that will go to munches or like intro bondage nights or whatever, and they'll be like, look, I was in Boy Scouts, I know like all the knots, I'm super good at knots. Really, when it comes to shibari, there's like 3 knots, and then like anywhere between like 3 to like half a dozen frictions, depending on like how fancy you want to get. And that's like really it. It's not really about knots. It's about knowing anatomy. It's about knowing physics. It's about being able to tension rope correctly. It's about being able to communicate with your partner. Like the actual being able to tie secure knots portion of it is like 10%. And like it is important, right? Because if you tie the wrong kind of knot, if it cinches down, those can cause issues on their own. But it's not actually really the knots like per se that are the dangerous part. It's all of the other things that come after you like tie that first single column with, you know, some sort of a ball line or whatever on the end of it. Super glue, however, I don't know if it's going to solve any of the issues. I don't know how much, because super glue would just make the jam worse. So I don't know if super glue would actually solve any of the problems that we had talked about in that video. But I would love to, like, I've been reading a lot about like mental play and mindfucks and stuff recently. And I think it would be really funny to do a scene where like you made somebody believe that they were being super glued into bondage, but then like that was not what was happening. It was actually a mindfuck. That would be really funny. If you could figure out a way to do it safely, like I don't know how that would happen, but I like the idea, but that's a free one for anybody that wants to try and make that happen. Should probably pop out the chat so I can read everything. That's probably a good idea. Yeah, exactly. Who needs tension when I can just super glue the rope to my rope bottom in any which way? I mean, that's definitely, I mean, there has to be people that do like actual, like for realsies, do BDSM with super glue, right? Like on the skin. That feels like a really bad idea, but I know if I look deep enough on like a hardcore BDSM porn website, there is super glue BDSM porn. That has to be a thing. Because people do like full body like cast stuff. People do mummification. I feel like that's kind of that vein of experience, you know? Oh, thank you so much. We got something from, hey, it's Amelia. What type of rope is the best to use if you're going to do something like wet and messy? Okay, great question. It depends on how much you give a shit about the rope and if you care about it looking good in photos. So, personally, there are sort of 2 main options, right? If you're doing anything where the rope could get wet, as it could be in wet and messy, you know, with like honey or milk or whatever, just stay away from natural fiber rope. It's not going to be a good option. So, you know, your jute, your hemp, your sisal, your coconut rope, not going to be a good option here. Save the sisal and the coconut rope for your seminal scenes, okay? However, you have a few other options when it comes to non-natural fibers. The most common thing you'll see that's really cheap, it's easy to get, is called MFP, which is monofilament polypropylene. I'm not confident I've remembered what MFP stands for correctly, but if you look up like a nylon or MFP rope, like agreeable agony is where I have gotten MFP from before. That's the place that I'd recommend going to because it's the only place I've ever gotten MFP non-natural fiber rope from. So that's a good option. It's really cheap, comes in a million colors. It is super fucking shiny. So, I mean, for you, maybe the shiny could be part of the aesthetic. Maybe you want like bright, shiny bubblegum pink for your birthday cake strawberry jello wet and messy scene. Great, perfect, works amazing for that. If you want something that's but it also side note here, just in terms of sensation of the rope on the skin, it slips more, so when you're tying it, it requires a little bit more finesse to use. If you are used to using natural fiber rope, it's not going to have that same sort of catch to it. Also, because it is that non-natural fiber, it does have a higher rate of skin burn. So when you're using the rope, especially kind of quickly, if you're taking it off the skin in kind of a quick fashion, that's going to cause rope burn more easily. Some people love that shit. They love rope burn. That's like they're a hardcore masochist for rope burn and they're into it. If you're not that person, be aware that can be more uncomfortable, maybe not your thing. Your other main option, personally my favorite kind of rope, personally the thing that I'm literally going to have my entire rope bondage kit, probably just be this, is called POSH, P-O-S-H. You can get it from DeJoto rope, you can get it from Twisted Monk. That one is much more similar to natural fiber. In terms of appearance, if you get it in like a brown or just an undyed color, it's going to look somewhat similar to jute or hemp. I really like it. It's fucking strong. It is a really good skin feel. It doesn't feel like natural fiber, but it doesn't feel like your typical cheap nylon. And I don't really know how to describe it, at least the times I have used it and the places I have purchased it from, and there are many options for it, of course, not just the places I've recommended. It has almost like more of a buttery texture, also great because it's not a natural fiber for people in general. If you are somebody that has a lot of allergies to like pollen and grasses and things like that, you get hay fever, good way to avoid that. I know some people are bothered by hemp because it smells like grass. I've never been bothered by that. I'm an old school horse girl. Like, I like it when it smells like a barn. Okay, it's not a problem for me. And jute, I've used jute occasionally for like pickup play, but none of my partners have jute as like their primary like rope kit rope, just for various reasons I can go into if people are curious to know about that. But POSH or MFP are going to be your best options because you can wash them. They're not going to, because the main problem is if you get rope wet, if you get it like, not just getting it messy, but getting it wet, like if it gets soaked in something, it becomes, this kind of goes back to knots actually, it kind of becomes like super glue for the knots, and that it becomes basically impossible to undo any of the knots, and it's really easy for that to end up in a dangerous scenario when the rope is like, it can swell up depending on what fiber you're using. Like, it's not good. Like, don't mess with it. And having something that you can wash that isn't going to seize up when it gets wet, way better option, and something you can use over and over and over again if wet and messy play is like your primary kink, and bondage is something you want to add into that. I actually have, I think this is still in my FetLife, years ago, like 3-4 years ago at this point, I did an outdoor bondage scene where we did like bondage and wet and messy play, and for that we did use MFP rope. We did like an ice cream cake, whipped cream, hot fudge thing. It was really fun. It's from a birthday. That is an example of doing something like that. So that is my answer. Hopefully that answers your question. And yeah, the places I recommend really quickly again would be Twisted Monk and DeJoto rope. If you look them up on FetLife, super easy to find on there. DeJoto has like faster processing time. You can get stuff from there, or Agreeable Agony if you want to go for the slightly cheaper option. Also, I believe Agreeable Agony does like custom rope color combinations. So if you really want something that's going to be super customized to your aesthetic, that's a good option as well. Okay, we got something here from Cookie Doll. Thank you so much. I only like the feel of super rough rope, only natural rope, so it's hard to find a good one for wet and messy. That is a good point. That is a good point. I feel like if I was in your position, because I love me some coconut rope, get me some spectral reinforced coconut rope that I can use in a partial suspension, and I am a happy girl, okay? That is what I live for. But if you're doing wet and messy with that, it's just, it's really hard to do that. Like, I almost feel like you would have to do like 2 scenes, 'side-by-side. I feel like, well, one thing is, if you haven't tried POSH before, I would try that. It's super fucking tough, so you can do really intense rough rope with it. It has more of a tooth to it compared to MFP or nylon, so it is going to feel slightly more like natural fiber, but not scratchy in the way that kind of older rough jute could be, like if it hasn't been conditioned properly, or like coconut or sisal. If you want to be able to combine the two, I feel like you'd either have to be careful of keeping them separate, or you would like need to do one thing after the other. So like maybe you had like your legs in like some kind of leg binder or futomomo, what have you, and like coconut rope, and you're like kneeling on something, like you are kneeling on like Legos or rocks or whatever, and then you're doing the wet and messy play on like the top half of your body and just being careful to not have it drip down on the legs, or vice versa. Maybe your like chest is in a chest harness and then your legs are the subject for like the wet and messy thing. You just kind of like try to keep them separate. The one thing I would say is, outside of very particular coconut rope that I don't think they actually make anymore, which is the Spectra reinforced stuff I mentioned, most coconut rope in my experience is kind of like one use only anyways, because it does knot up so much, and it does just, it's like velcros to itself basically, because of all the little like prickly particles that pop out of the coconut rope. It's really, really hard to actually like use it and then unknot it and save it. Like you basically have to cut it off if you put knots in it. So if you want something where like you're not putting any knots in the bondage at all, you're doing kind of like an Ichinawa sort of deal where it's not about like having knots and the complicated structure, like you can use coconut rope and just know that you're gonna like toss the coconut rope afterwards because it's super fucking cheap. And if you're not putting knots in it, then there's less of that risk associated with like the swelling, and then you don't have to worry about not being able to undo the knots because there's not any. Also, just like having a lot of cutting tools on hand, keeping 4 safety shears around or whatever. So if you do put knots in it, it's going to be hard to undo regardless of if it gets wet. So being able to have a lot of things there to help you get out of it can be an option. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard sometimes to just be able to combine stuff together in the way that we want to, and nature has not allowed us to do so in a like risk-informed way, unfortunately. But I hope that helps. All right. Oh, yes, and by the way, for people that are like joining us and maybe are not used to these live streams, I answer questions in order. If you want to make sure I answer your question, we have some lovely examples of super chats. You can either do a super chat through YouTube, or you can check out the link down below, which is for Streamlabs. If you use Streamlabs, YouTube keeps 30% of every super chat. And if you want to make sure that you're not paying Susan Wojcicki and you're not paying Google and all their bullshit, instead of paying me, that is the best way to do it. But really, either one, whatever works for you. Personally, I like Streamlabs because it's YouTube is very deceitful when it comes to super chats. Like, they don't tell people that when you're using a super chat, they keep 30% of the money. That is crazy. But they do. Just so you know. All right, my foot's falling asleep. We're gonna sit like this now. Sitting with my knees in the air. Okay, let's see. Next question. Next question. Still have never had the chance to see or learn rope suspension in person. The local rope classes I started going to stopped because of COVID, and then I moved for work after I graduated. Yeah, that's really hard. I feel like a lot of people are in a similar position. I'm in a similar position. There's a lot of people doing rope stuff, but like rope education is just like not happening in the way that it used to. There's one person I know that's doing like a beginner intensive, but I don't really know them that well, so I'm not sure what the quality level on that is. And the only other class they've done for like 2 months that's rope bondage related is a class on technical rigging, which is like for people that already know how to do suspension. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, there's going to be people that have been trying to learn rope bondage on their own for like 2 years at this point. Like, maybe we should have some like newbie nights here to make sure people aren't like risking permanent like sensation loss in their hands and in their arms. Like, maybe we could do some of that, but I don't teach rope, so I don't get any say in that. I just try to put the vibes out into the universe for what I want to see. But there are lots of online resources, definitely. Like, I don't want to beat a dead horse about this, but just to reiterate, You know, my sources are linked in the video I just did about the rope bondage scenario that went wrong. And I do have links to a lot of online resources for learning from the ground up for how to do rope bondage and tutorials and everything else. You know, suspension is one thing. It is quite complicated, but there are a lot of things you can at least like watch visually, and then you can kind of understand the theory behind it. So that way when you go into a classroom setting, you've already kind of like done your homework, right? It's like when you read the chapter you're going to go over in class before you go to class. Like, you're going to be more prepared for that, and you're going to be able to absorb more of the detail of the material when you already kind of understand, okay, these are the physics of this thing, this is this technique, this is what this is called. Just having that information kind of in your noggin already, even if you haven't been able to practice it, is going to be helpful. So there are certainly ways to do it, but it's definitely no substitute for actually being able to take classes, for sure. Ooh, thank you, Frank. First time catching you live. Love your content and appreciate you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you could be here. Is that a Witcher 3 t-shirt? Thanks for asking, Dave. I had a friend that bought me a lot of, like, they found out I was streaming, Witcher games, and they bought me a couple of shirts, both, like, bought me, some Mass Effect ones, and they bought me this Witcher t-shirt and a Witcher tank top. So they're going to be making appearances in videos and streams coming to you soon, which I greatly appreciate. I don't know where they're from. Sorry. I think they may be from Etsy. All I know is they got leggings and t-shirts, and they got some for me too. It was very sweet. Never look at how hot it is. It only makes it hotter. That is an interesting theory. I could see how that would happen. Actually, I think I turned off the AC right before the stream started, and I think it was 78 or 79 in here, which is like, I'm acclimated now. I can do that. I'm fine. I'm not dying. You're dying. I think, well, I was listening to YouTubers earlier today, and I think the new phrases for that are Control-Alt-Deleting out of life and being yeeted from the game called life. I think those are the new phrases that we're using on YouTube these days. It's getting silly. It's getting real silly. All right, there, motorcycle. Calm the F down. I don't feel like YouTube is consistent with its age restriction. It is not. I cannot, like, literally have been doing YouTube as my job for years at this point. And before that, I was doing it as a hobby for years. And at no point have I ever been able to concisely figure out what makes a video age restricted by YouTube. Now, I do age restrict some of my own videos just because, like, there are certain topics I wouldn't, like, want anybody to find. But it's like, they, like, punish you? They punish you as a content creator if you make stuff that is age restricted, even if it's, like, good to do that. It's really weird. Like, I would do that for more stuff if it didn't already ding it so badly. It's very, very strange. I just don't feel like the guidelines are ever clear with anything related to YouTube, but I just have my tinfoil hat theory is that Google bought YouTube not because they want YouTube as a platform or because it makes money for them, because YouTube is very expensive to run because of all the required server space. I think they just use it to test their AI. Like, that's it. They're like, YouTube is the perfect place to test their AI programming. And that's what they use it for, basically. Like, we can test this at scale and no one can stop us. Ha ha ha. It's our own website. And that's basically what it is. TBH, prove me wrong. Hey Evie, what would you say are your basic must-know ties for both floor and suspension? For floor and suspension, I would say my, like, if I had to, I'm going to pick 5, okay? Any single column tie, any double column tie, a hands-free chest harness, a box tie chest harness, and a futomomo. If you can do those things in some combination, you have, like, dozens of suspension options available to you, right? You can do just 2 futomomos. You can do a futomomo and a chest harness that's hands-free and a thigh cuff that's a single column. You can do a waistline and 2 thigh lines and then a TK, right? Like there are lots of options that come out of that. But those would be my like 5. Definitely in like the order of complexity would be single column, double column, futomomo, hands-free chest harness, and then box tie. And box tie is like, that is more something that comes from the fact that like, that's kind of an expected thing that people would believe that you would know if you go to classes to do bondage. Personally, I very, very rarely tie as a bottom using a hands-free or chest harness, or sorry, rather, I don't really tie with TKs or box ties very often because I have very nervy upper arms. And so if I'm using that in a suspension where it's loaded, like it's going to be something that just fatigues the whole suspension a lot faster. And there's definitely like a million variations on TKs. Everyone has their own style. You know, you can learn a billion of them if you want to. And so it could be I just haven't found the right one yet that's tensioned the right way or whatever. But like they're so finicky. And it's very much like a classical style thing. But yeah, it's not always necessary, let's say. Thank you so much, Michael. In profound appreciation. Thank you. I'm just out here trying to do what I think is best and try to force people to have conversations I think we need to have that we don't. Like rope bondage being dangerous. Because no one's talking about that. I mean, on YouTube, they're not really. I couldn't find any videos of people just being like, PSA, rope bondage dangerous. Remember that. So I'm happy to contribute to that dialogue, I suppose, if people need that. Need that to be confirmed for them. But yeah, those ones would be my options for like the need to know ties. And you can find so many good tutorials for those on places like Crash Restraint, the Duchy, Shibari Study. Tons of options out there online. If you can't go to in-person classes, in-person would always, always, always be my number one thing to do, because having that in-person feedback, especially when you're new and you're learning the basics of your techniques, is so important. Because if you don't get that early feedback and you start developing bad habits that you don't realize are bad habits when you do bondage, that's going to like carry forward into everything else that you do. And it's going to be harder to unlearn that when you've taught it to yourself. You know, does that make sense? Not that self-tying is bad anyway, because I definitely don't believe that, but it's just you want to, or self-tying, solo tying, all those things. I don't think those are bad. It's just you got to be aware that having that in-person feedback is going to give you more opportunities to learn at like a deeper level than when you're just like trying to follow a tutorial on YouTube. Thank you for introducing me to Bondage Tuition. Great channel. Yes, I have really enjoyed the Bondage Tuition channel from what I've seen from them so far. I think it's really great to have another BDSM YouTube channel. I've always noticed like with rope bondage channels, they really tend to come and go because YouTube just does not like bondage as a concept. Because if you look on BDSM stuff on YouTube, a lot of it is re-uploaded porn. And in particular, it's a lot of re-uploaded bondage porn. And so it's very hard for YouTube sometimes to be able to tell this is pornography versus this is educational stuff. And they probably don't even care, to be honest. They're just like, that seems suspicious, we're gonna delete it. And so a lot of channels just get yeeted from YouTube. They stop posting, you know. And so I don't know necessarily what the lifespan of a YouTube bondage channel is, but I'm hoping it's good enough. And I like having other perspectives and just more people talking about it. Always a good thing. We love that. What is different about Japanese rope bondage? What a great question. From Simping 101, the best username to ever ask me a question. Sorry, I'm gonna move. I don't know what I'm doing. I just can't find a comfortable position to ask questions in. Sorry, give me a second. I need to get water also. That's gonna happen at some point. Trying to use my desk for leverage to be able to move. Okay, this feels better. I'm like in front of everything I want to be in front of. Okay, this probably doesn't seem different at all, but it's different to me, and that's what matters. So I'm gonna answer this, Then I'm gonna get water for a second. What is different about Japanese rope bondage? I'm funny because it's one of those questions that's like, if you ask that on certain parts of the internet, you're gonna ask to like start a fight basically, because people have very strong opinions about like the true way of shibari, kimbaku. Like it's like, oh my god, it's just like when weebs fight, but for like BDSM stuff, and it's just cringy. So Japanese rope bondage, I'm gonna first, in order to define what makes it different, I'm gonna define like what Western like style bondage is. So in America, we do actually have our own bondage tradition, right? If you remember something like, you know, the old school black and white movies with like the lady being tied down to train tracks, damsel in distress stuff, you know, princess tied up by an evil warlord in a castle. That is kind of our lineage of bondage here in the West. It tends to be a lot more utilitarian. It tends to just have a very specific style to it. And that is certainly something you still see a lot of, like if you see like hog ties, for example, or like any sort of hobbling thing where it's just like basically like 20 single column ties on somebody's body. Like that's very like Western style bondage, like American style bondage. And that is kind of what we started with as we were beginning the kink scene in the 70s and 80s and so on. And it wasn't until a little bit later on that we started to import what we would call like Eastern style bondage, Japanese bondage, shibari, kambaku. I'm not going to get into what the difference between shibari and kambaku is. They're different words. People think that they have really intensely different meanings, and it's very important that you tell which one that you're using or not. As far as I can tell, I've never noticed a particular difference between people that actually use kambaku versus shibari. Totally whatever you want to say that just sounds good when you say it and makes sense for you. Shibari is probably more common, but that actually comes from a much like sort of not direct lineage, but a longer lineage. And now somebody's weed whacking. Gonna hope they're gonna stay going far away from me. So just weed whacking out of nowhere at 6:30 p.m. We love it. Okay, so there's a longer historical lineage there that comes, at least originally for a lot of things, from something called Hojo Jutsu. And Hojo Jutsu is what was used in Japan in certain eras to restrain criminals. And the particular way that somebody was tied and where they were tied gave you indications of their social rank in the crime committed. It had sort of its own code to it. And it was something that carried forward in a couple of different ways. And the main one, if I remember correctly, is sort of early, like, Japanese erotic... Oh! What happened to my camera? Oh, God. Okay. My camera just crapped out on me. That's not good. Camera, are you still alive? Well, this is exciting. That was unexpected. So anyways, so like early like Japanese erotic art, right? You have like wood block prints, you have other things like that, and bondage is actually sometimes part of those things, as derived from sort of the more or less the fetishization of Hojo Jutsu, essentially. And in that traditional framework, you then see, I want to say it's the early 1900s, you see, what the fuck is this guy's name? Ito something, I want to say? Sorry, I'm not like a professional, this is like totally on the spot. I'm just trying to remember what I've learned over the years, like without looking at any of my sources or anything to refresh my memory. But there's like one guy in particular in Japan who, like, I believe in the early 1900s, kind of revives this like early Japanese erotic art. He practices stuff on his wife. He takes a lot of photos. They become very famous. It's spreads around to other people. He develops his own style of rope bondage that's practical for erotic usage, including suspension, derived from things like Hojo Jutsu and those like original like early erotic prints. He has one very famous photo in particular that's him suspending his pregnant wife upside down. So if you've seen that, it's that guy. And eventually He has a bunch of people that learn from him, and in like the very most Japanese way possible, there becomes kind of this system that's almost sort of like learning a martial art from like a particular grandmaster, where like different grandmasters kind of develop their own personal style. You can learn from those grandmasters, and they kind of have their own lineage of how they happen to do bondage. But in particular, and this is the big difference I think that is kind of lost in the West stylistically when it's imported from Japan, it's imported from those masters, is Japanese rope bondage as it is usually practiced and sort of the context for it abroad, as in abroad from here, not abroad from Japan, is that it has a lot of roots in humiliation and social shame. Like a lot of the rope bondage ties are designed to be like erotically revealing, and they're usually called models in Japan. They have a very different relationship, because a lot of shibari over there is not necessarily like people privately doing things for their own erotic pleasure. It's a lot of performances and things like that. And the models aren't necessarily bottoms in the way that we would think of over here. It's like models that are like basically like models that get like hired to do a certain number of gigs, and like they may not know anything about BDSM at all or anything about bondage. They're just like they're basically to take photos and do a few shows, and that's kind of it. But not getting into that too much, there is this like context of like humiliation and being revealed, not being able to demur away from things, and being like forced to endure things like an embarrassing and humiliating way. And that's when you get a lot of the ties, for example, like like the kimono tie. I can't remember the Japanese word for it because I'm gonna mispronounce it anyways. But like kimono ties, where like the front of the kimono is very much revealed. Certain other ties where like maybe the kimono, because kimonos are like traditionally associated with like formal like Japanese rope bondage performances, and you have a lot of those sorts of elements, which is not really like humiliation. We don't really consider rope bondage as like a humiliation practice over here. Like for some people, rope is humiliating, but for sort of the way that we think about it over here, it tends to be more of a pain-based thing, more of a sensation thing, more of a directly erotic thing. Oh my god, why is my camera dying? I am concerned about why this is happening. It may just be that my camera is getting overheated. Okay. I think my camera is getting overheated. So give me a second. I'm going to turn my AC back on, and hopefully we can keep doing this live stream. I'm going to have to fiddle with the audio and stuff as well because of that. So give me a second. Sorry to interrupt this shibari lecture. Okay. It's going to be loud for a second. For a second. Okay. I hope that works. There is going to be a hiss just because I have the fan going on like max right now. And so there is just going to be buzzing because I don't want my camera to be damaged. So good times. You guys can't hear me? You guys should be able to hear me. I turned off the sound for a minute just because I needed to monitor. That's why I had the headphones plugged in, is I needed to monitor the sound to make sure I had enough had like the good balance of like noise cancellation going on, but you guys could like still hear me. So you should hear me now though. Okay, great. Perfect. Oh, where the fuck was I? Okay. Western bondage, less about humiliation, more about sensation, more about having either erotic or intense, like painful experiences, sometimes power exchange. The actual style of how you do the rope is different as well. There's different frictions. Different people have different preferences for different knots. People that do more Western style bondage are more likely to use non natural fiber ropes like MFP. People that do shibari pretty much exclusively do jute. Some people do hemp as well. People that kind of do a mix of both tend to more commonly use hemp because it kind of works for both. Uh, Also, with Western style bondage, you're more likely to see additional elements added in, such as gags or handkerchief blindfolds, things like that, that kind of contribute sort of that like captured princess Wild West vibe. In Shibari, we'll see kind of additional add-ons, but things most commonly, if you're going to see anything added into it, it's going to be either wax or it's going to be something called tenagui, which is a Japanese style of dishcloth, and that can be used as a neck support. It can be used as a blindfold or as a gag, or some combination of them, depending on how many you happen to have on you. But things like ball gags, for example, are really not going to be something you see a lot of. And the overall aesthetic looks different. If I could show you guys a side by side picture of how they both look, like you would be able to tell there's an aesthetic difference, like box ties, for example. So, the style that goes over the arms and then creates that box shape in the back, that's going to be like pretty much always a shibari thing. Like that comes from Hojo Jutsu. That comes from that lineage directly. And you will see things like people will have single column ties around the chest in like Western style bondage, but it's not the same construction. There's not the same intent. It's not typically like load bearing and things like that in the way that you would do it in like a shibari style suspension. So that is my very rambly answer to the difference between Western and Eastern style bondage. It is by no means a complete answer. This is me rambling off of the top of my head. There's many, many, many different discussions about this, many different opinions and factors to consider, but I hope that kind of gives you a broad brush overview of some of the differences. What rope is best for suspension? It depends on who you ask and what your priorities are for rope and for your suspension. Traditional Japanese bondage, like I mentioned, the most common thing that you will see is going to be jute. Jute allows you to tie very quickly. It is a lighter material, however, it requires a lot of maintenance. If you cannot commit to maintenance, do not buy jute. It also tends to be a little bit thinner if you're getting it in a 5 millimeter width, which is or diameter, whatever. I don't know. Math words. 5 millimeter size versus 6 millimeter size. 5 millimeter, I don't recommend it, but some people use it. 6 millimeter is a little bit stronger, but overall it is weaker. It requires maintenance. However, it allows you to tie quite quickly. A lot of people enjoy the particular sensation that it happens to produce. After that, you have hemp, which is also a natural fiber rope. It's similar to jute, however, it is heavier, it is stronger, and it requires less maintenance. It also has a grassy smell to it, which some people like, some people don't like. Depends on what you want. The final option is Posh, which is my favorite. It's a non-natural fiber that most closely, though not identically, resembles natural fiber ropes, is the strongest, and does not require maintenance, and is also washable. It tends to be more expensive. It also comes in less options in terms of length for rope, which depending on what bodies you're tying and what ties you're doing, that may be a factor. Maybe you prefer tying with a longer length, for example, because your partner has a larger body and you know that if you tie chest harness, you're going to need exactly 120 feet instead of 90. So having 3 ropes that are XYZ, 40 feet long versus 30 is going to make a big difference. So depends on what you want. Any one of those 3 can work depending on what priorities are most important to you when you are doing a rope bondage. This is something that's really important to remember. There is no one objective best, whether it be best single column tie, best type of rope, best type of chest harness, best type of whatever. It's going to be about what you want from your scenes, what you know how to do already, what fits your skill set, what your bottom wants in terms of sensation, what you can commit to in terms of maintenance, what is accessible to you locally, what is most affordable for your budget, what the person you are learning from ties with as well. That can be a factor. There are lots of things that go into what best is. And so don't get pigeonholed into, I need to pick the exact and only best thing. And if I don't do that, then it's going to fail, right? Unless you are trying to suspend somebody with fucking, I don't know, floss. Like you're probably like the important stuff about rope is not picking out like, oh, should I get toss a jute or should I get Awana jute? Like which one of these should I get? You know, it's going to more be a factor of like, have you practiced using your safety shears and do you have them on you? Do you know CPR? Do you know what to do if somebody falls? Like it's about the safety thing, it's about practicing your craft. It's about being able to admit when you don't know something, tying inside your skill set, taking time to practice on a regular basis to refresh those perishable skills, right? Because knowing how to do bondage is a perishable skill. You don't learn it once and then know it forever. If you start out and you do a single column tie and it's 6 months and you have not practiced, like you got to start at those basics again. So those are other much more important factors to me in my mind, but I just want to get that out there. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm trying to find where I was before I went. Okay. Okay. Think I found where we are. Maybe. I got a choker with snaps from Hot Topic and it's too small. Anyone have tips on how to get extenders or make it longer? I'm not a leather worker, but it's also a choker from Hot Topic, so I feel like it's probably better to just like, here's my advice. Get something from Etsy that is custom made for the size of your neck and don't waste money on things that don't fit. Instead of having to pay money for an extender, like you can get custom sized chokers and dog collars on Etsy for like $15, which is probably less than it would cost you in time and labor to be able to extend a choker from Hot Topic. Not exactly the answer to the question you were asking, but is my 2 cents. So there you go. Hey there, me and my BF attend the rope events you posted in a video about. I just wanted to tell you it's not a rave club or random background performance. It was a BDSM event held monthly. I am going to counter that by saying I know it's held in a club. Like, it's not the same thing as something held in a private BDSM venue. Like, I showed in the video like where the location was. I'm gonna pull up on my Instagram account just for the sake of let's see, where is it? I'm like, and I'm willing to be wrong about that, but like a BDSM event held at a club, because I go to events like that where there's like performances, and like this is a performance. Like they do performances. Is like you could, because there's other like pictures that are at the club, right? How can I show this exactly? Um, is there anything I can actually show that doesn't just like have like it reminds me of like torture garden events, but yeah, like here's like another like picture at that venue, you know? Here, I'll try to show you. You guys can't like see their name. I don't know if it'll focus. But like, I don't know, sure looks like a club to me, not like a BDSM party. I don't know. Is this the place? Because then there's like two fucking different things, but like everything I looked at is like, oh, this is like club promo. Like this is like club is like women get in free, house drinks for $5 kind of a deal. And maybe it's different venues, but like it's like propaganda is I think what it's called, or is that the name of the uh yeah. Pretty sure this is the same place. Willing to be wrong about that, but it doesn't look like any dungeon I've ever been to. Sure looks like a club that happens to have BDSM stuff at it, which is a very different thing. um Also like okay, regardless, timeout though. If it is a rope bondage event that's held monthly, why the fuck were there no DMs or medical personnel stepping in? Like there's like if you watch the video, there are people that walk by directly in front of this shit happening and do nothing. Like that's very concerning. Also, I'm pretty sure they're on a stage. Like, am I wrong? Looks like they're on a stage. Oh, we're having arguments about dental floss. Like here, I want to show you guys like more of like what I'm talking about. But God, it's like really hard to find stuff that's like I can probably share this on YouTube. Where is I'm trying to find this like because I know it has like a name and I found it when I was looking. Maybe I sorry, I'm just like getting distracted by this because I want to. No, I want this. There we go. Sunday Bound, right? That's the name of the event. So here's the event, right? Here's the event. This is from the Riggers account, so I don't give a shit if I show their name because like I want people to know. I want people to be able to keep track of people like this, just so they can be aware. So it's called Sunday Bound. Uh, Propaganda is the name of the place, and literally this poster says is ties performed by House Rigger Arcade 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. So it is a performance. House Riggers. There's two House Riggers and two House Bunnies. That's not how that works at a BDSM dungeon. There's not house riggers, like, unless you're going to a professional dungeon where you are paying somebody to tie you up and it's like a house of domination, right? Like, this is a club that has rope happening at it. As like a performance like promo for the club. Because when I think of like a BDSM venue that does rope, I'm thinking there's like a half dozen hard points. There's no house riggers. There's no house bunnies. There are just people that show up and they do rope. They're being monitored by other dungeon monitors that know how to do rope themselves. It's not a performance venue. There's no drinks. I think they even said on here, what they didn't they say something about yeah. Yeah, it says happy hour 8 to 9 p.m. half off. So like that's not a thing that happens at BDSM dungeons. And like yeah, again, it's like this is on a like on a this is like on a stage, there's a pole, like it's just like it's very much like it's a club. It's a fetish themed night at a club. I don't know if propaganda like does other things or if they only do this one Sunday event. I'm not in South Florida, so I don't know, but that's what I mean when I say it's like a non BDSM venue. Like this is a club that has drinks and dancing, and there's clubs like here that do stuff like this. There like are two clubs I've been to, not very often because of COVID, obviously, that have stuff like this. And this is like stuff with BDSM added onto it, but it's not a non-for-profit dungeon where the only thing they do is BDSM. Is there people they drink and they do drugs and they dance and they watch people do bondage, and then they have random people in the audience that they decide they want to get tied up. Fun enough, in the description for some of these posters, they're like, "Oh, experienced riggers are free to like tie their own bunnies, but then you know, beginners have to tie with house riggers. And it's like, oh, great, this guy's the fucking house rigger. And no one like ever caught on to him not being good at rope. That's like concerning for the quality of the activities that happen at this dungeon or event or nightclub or whatever the fuck this is. I should probably actually just look it up. Sorry, I'm like going on an entire like side ramble, but I feel like this is important to clarify. Propaganda, Florida. What does it say? I mean, Google is certainly saying it's a bar. I don't know. And it definitely looks like they do things that do a lot of live music, actually. Looks like they got a lot of live music happening. I don't know. Does this look like any dungeon anyone's been to? That's like a non-for-profit BDSM dungeon? Does that like... I can definitely see the balls of Stoli. Definitely see the balls of Stoli from here. Oh, yeah. So that's what I mean when I say it's like, unless there were DMs that I don't know that. I don't see any indication that they are. I don't see any photos that involve DMs. It's just, hey, if you're a new person that's never been tied up before, tie with a house rigger. And like, you'll have a fun time. And like, God, the photos are so sloppy. They make me nervous when I watch them. I'm like, all these people don't even know because they're new. And they could be in danger and they don't know because no one's telling them things. Anyway, sorry. I have to edit this video like 4 times, so I know there's things that I'm leaving out. Can I be a good dom with a small d? Can you clarify what that means exactly? What are you hoping you want to be with being a... Sorry, I'm sexual. Is this an innuendo? Are you asking about genital size? Or are you talking about being a dom that's not dominant, as in not a capital letter D type? I'm confused. Clarify for me, please. Bum, 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 bum. The reason I answer questions slowly is because I answer them in detail. So I'm not just going slow on purpose to make people upset. I try to like give people their money/time's worth for asking me a question, and I know it takes me a while to get through things, but I try my best. Yeah, please don't use spongy cords. What is it had in a 50 Shades of Grey? Was it mm, cable ties? That's what it was. They had cable ties in 50 Shades of Grey. Probably not a good idea for that either. Yeah, no, the Streamlabs donations do show up. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay, but yeah, they do show up. And I definitely saw yours, Cookie, so not to worry. My hubby is suggesting that I freeze the steel cuffs in the freezer before he put them on me, but I'm concerned it would rust the cuffs. That is an interesting question. I actually don't... I'm not thinking about rust so much as I am the cold metal, like, sticking to your skin. Because, like, definitely you can do things with, like, temperature play and metal, but I don't know about, like, if you have, like, tight-fitting cuffs and they're, like, frozen and you stick them to your skin, like, wouldn't the same... Like, if your skin has any moisture on it, like, if you've moisturized, you have lotion on there, it's humid, wouldn't that kind of do the same thing as, like, when you stick an ice cube to your tongue? I feel like that could happen, right? That would be my worry. I wouldn't want to, like, exfoliate that part of my arm. You know, so. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they would rust. I think that would depend on the composition of the cuffs. But I don't know what cuffs you have, so don't know. It maybe, like, especially if they have moisture on them and then you freeze them, like, it could rust it, I guess. But that's not my primary concern in that scenario. I would ask that question on FetLife and see if you have anybody that has experience doing that, because that is not something I have run into before. What is the best way to find rope classes in the area? So, I would say the best way to find rope classes in your area, as always, is FetLife. It works best, obviously, if you're in like the US or Canada, but there are events in Germany, the UK, etc. on there. I've seen them, they're out there. And FetLife actually has a really convenient way to search for that. Like what I do, I literally just click on my location on FetLife. Like you go to events, it automatically fills in your location and then you can see events on there. So in order, like chronological order. And you can click on them, see who made the event, see who's RSVP'd. And there's a lot of like Georgie's first gangbang double XL, whatever on there. And it's something you're gonna have to deal with. It's part of the process. But if you look through there, most of the public events will be on there. You can also look for groups on FetLife that are in your area that are for rope bondage, right? So like Chicago area shibari or South Florida rope bondage, right? Those groups will also have maybe more private events, information for meeting people, munches that happen, and so on that maybe don't have their own FetLife, event happening for them because they're a little bit less public. Thoughts on doing tickling professionally? I would do tickling professionally because I'm not ticklish. But if prodoms do tickling professionally, I think that's a great way to get your fetish needs met. But yeah, that's my advice for finding rope classes and munches in the area. I do recommend if you don't know anybody, if you don't know who's safe and who's not, who's like been banned from every dungeon, I would go to munches first, meet people that way, figure out the who's who in your local area, find out where those events are, and especially if you don't find anything on FetLife at all for rope bondage, then your next best thing is going to be to go to those in-person events, those in-person munches, or even virtual munches too. You can ask people that way if you are having a conversation on there. Because sometimes people only host things in their home, they don't want to have their address on FetLife, a bunch of other reasons. So yeah, there are usually options, but all of them involve FetLife basically at some point. I like how the person like apparently didn't have the patience to wait 20 minutes for me to see their comment because this is a Q&A live stream. I guess thanks for being mad about me describing something that is in fact a club that hosts a BDSM party as being a club that hosts a BDSM party and not like a full-time dungeon. I don't feel like I mischaracterized it. I feel like it's like looking at the photos for the venue, it's exactly like two of the venues around here that pretty much do the same thing. And in fact, I used to go to a place when I was first in the rope bondage community where we had basically the same setup where we would go to a local gay bar and like on Thursday nights, there would be somebody that came from our local dungeon that would tie people up. And it was literally like a come line up and get tied up and do suspension for the first time thing. I never actually did any rope there because I didn't want to wait and I wanted to drink. And they had rules about mixing drinking and doing rope. You had to wear a wristband and stuff. But it, that's the thing. And it happens. And it doesn't mean that like they can have kink nights at the club and then also have vanilla live music performances and like they're two different things, okay? I don't know. Okay. Next question. Um, yeah, freezer burn. Sorry, I forgot the word. It's freezer burn. That's what it is. Yeah, stainless steel will in fact rust if it stays wet long enough. I would be very intensive in washing and drying them thoroughly after, perhaps a hair dryer. Yeah, it's kind of the problem with metal. I mean, definitely you can get like metal that's not gonna like for example, like people have metal day collars that because of the way they're designed and the metal they use, it won't rust even when you shower in it over and over and over again. But like that is gonna be a factor. Something to think about. I think there has to be a way to like get them cold without like risking the rusting portion of it. I feel like if you put them in front of a cold AC for a long time, that might get a similar effect, but it's probably not going to be exactly the same. Yeah, and then the oil for the hinge and everything else. Yeah, it's good point. Yes, thank you, MP Expand. Shibari means to tie and Kambaku means tight binding. Yes, thank you. I like trying to remember on top of my head what every word means, and it's like, oh god, I haven't had to I just say the words. I don't have to think about their definitions. Yes, thank you. Good to see you as well. Hope you're doing all right. Yeah, I know. I'm in dark mode. I think turning the AC on helped. Oh Jesus Christ! It's 83 degrees. I'm gonna close the door to my room. No. I think it's probably also because I have all my lights on right now, and that probably is also heating up the room, even though they're supposed to be better quality than that, but whatever. Yes, very mysterioso. I mean, I could just turn off the camera forever and then just do a no face podcast. I want to hear you talk more about tickling. Um, what about tickling do you want to know that I haven't said already? I feel like I was thorough in my BDSM 101 video. If I did not cover something you want to know about, let me know. I'm happy to answer that. No need to send in another donation. Um, I'm not ticklish. I don't do tickling in my play. And that was the thing I struggled with when I made that after I made that video. There were so many people that watched that and then thought that I was like a tickle torture top and that ooh mistress, can you tickle me please? Ooh mistress, I want to tickle your feet. Just oh, no sense of boundaries. And I was very particular to never say in there that I did tickling or I was into it or that I was ticklish. I tried to have separation there and it worked, but not good enough. So it wasn't about me being into tickling. There's other videos where people have talked about their own tickling interests, but it's not really my thing, personally speaking. As a top, I've never done it, so I can't say that I wouldn't top anybody that was into tickling. That's not like an activity that's on my BDSM wish list of things I'd want to do for a scene. Okay, let me see. Next question. I did do a video about tickling. I don't know. I guess I sort of assumed that was in reference to my video about tickling. But Melanie, if you haven't seen it, I did a BDSM 101 video on tickling. It's pretty good. Did well. YouTube liked that video for some reason. I don't know. It was the most inexplicable thing. YouTube was like, you know what people need to know about tickle torture? We are taking that one to the moon, baby. So, my fan, I can't put anything next to my computer because it's in a corner. And it's also not that the computer is overheating, it's the camera. Although having the AC on, not that I want to jinx it, seems to have fixed it. And I don't know how it's 83 degrees in here. Wowza, it is a hot one. I want to hear more about how tickling connects to rope bondage. Again, this is not something I have personal experience doing, so I'm really limited in the advice I can give, other than the idea that it can, doing very restrictive, ties on a floor and then tickling somebody and watching them squirm around, or tying somebody down to a table and tickling them there. There's definitely options for scenes, but other than that, it's kind of just I talked about how there's kind of this fun historical overlap where tickle torture has this sort of historical use in the Japanese criminal punishment system. So does shibari, a la hojo jutsu. So like there is kind of just an interesting overlap there where if you want to do kind of, historical role play, there are options for that, but it's not something I've seen done, so I can't really give any examples or talk about my experience doing it. It's just like a hey, this could be a cool thing. I hope somebody tries it. Like that's basically the extent of what I can really say there. Oh my god. Okay, sorry. I gotta figure what the fuck is going on with my restream right now because I have people that should be blocked that somehow are able to do things still. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. I think I have it figured out now. Let me try this again. I gotta, let me, okay. There we go. Much better. Thank you for contributing to today's dialogue. Okay, we figured it out. Oh no, I can't. I lost so much of the chat. Okay, let's go. Okay. Sorry, I thought I had taken care of that before, and somehow they managed. I don't know what they did, but I think I finally fixed it. I'm sorry about that, guys. I thought I caught them earlier. Okay, so I think I answered the question about what rope is best for suspension. You're talking about my camera dying. I'm learning so many interesting things tonight. This stream's very informative. Thank you so much, James. What rope is best for tickling? I mean, seriously, like sisal or coconut rope can be ticklish if you're not tying it on somebody. If you're tying it, it's going to be mostly painful, but like the scratching against the surface is going to be sort of what produces that tickling sensation. What are some good ideas for non-physical punishment? Well, lucky for you, dear Buck, I actually have a whole video I did a couple months ago where I talked about non-physical ideas for punishment. And there's just a lot of them. There's a whole lot. I have like so many videos about punishments. I almost like don't want to get into it because it's like so many ideas, right? There's verbal stuff, there's writing lines, there's standing in a corner, there's having to do something humiliating. Like there's there's a million ideas. There's a bunch of ways to do non-physical punishments. There's removing privileges. There is taking away people's phones, for a period of time. There's extra chores. So many things you can do that are non-physical. And if you're only thinking about punishment in a physical framework, you're kind of missing the idea of what punishment is. Because if you're using punishment as a tool to correct a behavior, if that's the idea, then anything that's sufficiently motivating to your partner that they would rather not have done to them, basically. Or when, obviously people want to be able to keep using Twitter or their phone or whatever. That's really what the limit's going to be outside of obviously actual limits, not just the limits of your imagination. But if you're thinking about punishment in terms of like doing a pain-based scene, that's like an entirely different question. I try really hard to not conflate impact play and pain play with punishment. A lot of people call them the same thing because the framework that they use for their scenes, for their pain play, is punishment. And that's like the narrative tool is like, oh, you did something bad, you're a bad girl, now I'm going to punish you. But they're not actually synonymous in like the lifestyle of BDSM. You described a type of rope you preferred. Can you explain the difference between that rope and natural jute hemp? Thank you. I literally went over this for like 5 minutes in detail about how all they're different. I'm gonna give you a really quick summary, and then if you want to, you can rewind and watch earlier where I explained this twice. So I prefer Posh. I like Posh because it's a non-natural fiber. It's very strong. It doesn't require maintenance, and it has a nice skin feel to it. It is different than natural fibers because it is less likely to provoke skin irritation and contact dermatitis. It does not require maintenance. It is a good in between weight between Posh and Jute, so it's not too slow, it's not too fast. It is a reasonable price, it's fairly accessible, and I'm trying to think of like other reasons why I would like it better than that. Has a longer lifespan. That's also a good reason. Um, yeah, I just like it. I don't know. It's good stuff. Hemp's fine. I use Jute very occasionally. They're not like any of them are bad. I just prefer Posh. Those are the differences. Again, I went over those in more detail early in the stream. If you want to know that, you can rewind. I've talked about it a couple times. Ba, 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 ba. Are there specific things to do for longer term bondage to make sure there's no problems, reasonable comfort, for which you mean say an hour, not like 2 days? Good clarification. Good clarification. Um, you know, I think it's sort of like saying, how can you make handcuffs comfortable for like an hour or two? Like, kind of the point is that there's discomfort. That's kind of part of what happens in the process, and you can either fight the pain and have that resistance, or you can like lean into it and enjoy it. But if you're keeping the same bondage in the same position for 2 straight hours, like it's gonna be uncomfortable, it's gonna be painful in the same way that like sitting in a chair for 2 hours is gonna be uncomfortable after that long if all you do is sit in the same position for 2 straight hours. If you want to make sure you have it at a correct tension, right? You don't want it to be too tight or too loose. The looser is probably going to make it more comfortable versus less. You want to make sure the bottom is in a comfortable position to sustain the rope, right? So if you're standing vertically straight up, like that's going to be uncomfortable sooner than being on the floor. If you have a single column around one thigh or around an arm, like that's going to be more comfortable than like waist rope for 2 hours or a chest line for 2 hours. But really, like realistically, if you're doing something that's designed to have load on it and it's meant to be uncomfortable and it's meant to create stress in your body, wearing it for an hour or two straight without ever changing it or modifying it is just like not going to happen. Because when you're doing an actual suspension, when you're doing an actual scene, sometimes you do something where you tie everything on, you go up, and the one position you do is the only position. But most people, in order to have your body not get into something that's too uncomfortable for too long, like you move things around, you change things up or down, you add an extra line, you remove a line. There's you alter things as you go along. So even with a long scene, there's lots of very tiny things that can happen that will change the tie that will make it more sustainable long term. But yeah, altering stuff is going to be the most important. There are certain ties that you can do that are more decorative that you can wear for longer as like a party thing, right? You could do like a corset tie around your waist. You can do a decorative chest harness where those ones are meant to be comfortable. They're not meant to have, a big ass, like giant, like spider web stem in the back where, like, if you wear it for too long, it's going to like dig into your spine or something. There are lots of options out there for doing something that is less functional for pain or for play, but can look nice and can just be worn as being bondage on its own. If that's the only thing you want to do is just wear it for a long time. And I've done that before a long, long time ago, pre-pandemic days. I did something where I actually wore, I think was it a corset? I wore a rope bondage corset underneath a sweatshirt when we went to the movies. And it was a little discreet public bondage. Ooh, very spicy. But like that was sustainable for the whole movie because it was comfortable, wasn't too tight, wasn't too loose. And I believe I also wore a camisole between my skin and the rope because it was a natural fiber rope and I didn't want it to like rub too much and have like problems with like contact dermatitis with the rope. So that did help as well, kind of with the longevity of the rope, even if it didn't have the exact same skin feel to it. So there are some things you can do to make it more sustainable, but for the most part, bondage is typically like if it's an endurance activity, it's not like a marathon. It's more like running a mile, not like running 20 miles. I don't think that means anything, but hopefully that helps. But if you're willing to alter stuff and just about having some type of bondage on you for a longer period of time, then you can do a lot more than that. But that's not really typically the point of doing bondage unless you're doing something decorative. Well, okay, so I'm going to correct something. So somebody said for the rope you use in a harness and suspension, non-natural fibers is a poor choice in your tie if your tie relies on set tensions because the rope stretches. So earlier I talked about MFP for wet and messy play. That was not for a suspension. The non-natural fiber alternative that I mentioned for suspension is called POSH. And the way that it is designed specifically, the way the rope is manufactured, is it is spun under sufficient tension such that it even after long-term use, it doesn't stretch out. And actually, that is the recommended upline that Shay uses for her uplines when she does suspensions. And she's been doing that shit for like half a decade at this point. So I would be careful to not paint all non-natural fiber ropes as something with a broad brush. Cause like also like cotton is a natural fiber and that shit stretches like a motherfucker. So I'm not using cotton for suspensions even though it's natural. But you know, Posh does not stretch. It's like that's the whole point. Is that it's used for fucking ships, okay? Like it's meant to be used in an environment where it gets wet, where it's supposed to replicate natural fibers, and it does that really fucking well. And I've been using Posh rope on myself. I have used it in lots of scenes with other people. I've done it like I've literally done a fucking like Posh like gravity boot suspension, like where like all the tension is on like one point, and I've never had problems with it stretching. So it like you know, and even like natural fiber, like once it gets worn out a little bit, it can stretch a little bit as well, which is why maintenance is important. So you know, there's like stretching, like it like being elastic basically, but like Posh does not do that. That's the whole point. So yeah, but in general, like yeah, don't use cotton rope for a suspension. That's probably not a good idea. Or you know, MFP. Um, I don't think they're still in business, but like when I there are people that do suspensions that use other non-natural fibers, and part of how they do things is they account for that additional elasticity in the rope. And there are certain people that do make like high quality non-natural fibers that are meant to be used under tension. And there's just you got to make sure you're getting the right stuff from the right people, not just going to like Home Depot and getting whatever's on sale in the hardware aisle. You know what I mean? What about jute? I've mentioned this a couple times. Jute is fine. Jute is a natural fiber, which is why I didn't talk about it. Jute, however, is pretty much the weakest and requires a lot of maintenance. And if you don't have patience and you're not going to remember what to do to it, don't buy jute because you don't have to. It's not 1994 anymore. It's not the only thing you can get your hands on. We have a lot of options. So, yeah, jute is fine. I prefer stuff where I'm less worried about it randomly breaking while it's being used. And I want to say I grew up using hemp, but like in my bondage journey, I grew up using hemp. I'm used to that smell. I am used to that sensation, that tension, that particular way that it moves in that kind of slower fashion. Like that's like what I'm used to being in, and that's like what my brain gravitates towards. But everyone's gonna have their own preferences. Yeah, Shibari studies good stuff. I linked them in the video I did that came out earlier today. Like everything on there is fucking golden as far as I'm concerned. I've never gone to a Shibari study video and been like, this seems suspicious. Like, they're good. I love me some Shibari study. They're good people. Okay. So, yes. Yes, thank you for the links. Yeah, lots of good stuff. Okay, so approved. Yeah, Jude is approved. Jude is fine. Jude's good. I just don't use it personally because I just my brain associates the smell of hemp with rope bondage, and so like that's just what I go towards. Plus, we also have like a rope manufacturer in the city where I live that like makes hemp rope. And if you go to any sex store, local BDSM store, they all sell rope from that place and it's all hemp. So, like, that's also the most accessible for people that are looking for stuff locally, too. They do have jute as well, but like their thing they make is like high quality hemp rope for suspension. May the floss be with you. Indeed. Listen, if somebody has an example of like somebody really using floss in a suspension, not just like in bondage, and it somehow works. It feels almost like, you know, those like old YouTube videos where it's like, I filled my pool with Coke and then dumped a truckload of Mentos into it. Like, it feels almost like you would have that happen, but instead it would be like somebody would basically make a basket out of floss and it would take like a million yards of floss to make it into a basket, like a hammock for somebody to hang in, basically, and be like, that is bondage. Okay, we got a question from Mr. Beansman. I recently did wax play for the first time and was surprised how not hot soy candles were. Do you know any materials that would be hotter? So there's a lot of factors that go into how hot wax is. Actually, within the soy candles, and I know this because I also like make candles for fun. Different soy waxes have different melting temperatures because they will have slightly different additives in them, or the soy wax itself is just different. So you can have a soy wax that has like a 10-degree difference melting point from a different soy wax. And honestly, if you want to make sure you can control the temperature as much as possible and have like a very customized experience, go to Walmart, go to Goodwill, go to Value Village, get yourself a little teeny mini crock pot and melt the wax in the crock pot. And then put a candy thermometer in it. And then you will have complete control of exactly what temperature your wax is, how far away you use the wax from the skin, and where on the body. Because different parts of the body have different levels of temperature sensitivity as well, right? So, like the front of your hands versus the back of your hands versus your elbow. I think your elbow is like very temperature sensitive, actually. So, fun fact about elbows, I suppose. Or like your shins versus your stomach versus your butt versus your back. Those will have different levels of temperature sensitivity, so it also depends on where you're doing it on the body. But if you want to make sure you have total control over things, a crock pot that you can control the temperature of is going to be the most customized, and then you're going to know exactly what temperature it is, so you know what you like exactly. And then you can say, I want wax is going to have this melting point, but how far away you melt the wax from the skin, the ambient temperature of the room, if you have a barrier on like coconut oil or not, all of those can be factors in how hot it feels to you. Paraffin does typically have a little bit of a higher temperature range than soy does. Soy tends to be the lowest, like low temperature. Paraffin is also a good option. There are people that make paraffin candles. Usually people do some kind of soy paraffin blend, but again, depending on who manufactures the wax, it's going to be slightly different. Depends on the wick they use. Also depends on the size of the wick. Lots of factors can go into exactly how hot that wax is going to be when it hits your skin. So it's going to have to be a little bit of a trial and error, but large broad brush. Either use a crock pot, control the temperature yourself, or try a different wax like paraffin. I do know people that have, for example, used beeswax candles. Those have a much higher melting point, and so I cannot, in good conscience, like recommend that you use a beeswax candle on your body, because that'll probably actually give you burns. Just not something I want to do as a educator person on the internet. So yeah, I can, it could be something like personally, I am very temperature sensitive, and like I definitely use a lower temperature wax, and that like works great for me. But I find there is something of a correlation between like body fat percentage. Like I find that people that tend to be lower body fat percentage tend to be more sensitive to temperatures that are lower, whereas people that have a higher body fat percentage tend to be a little bit like less sensitive and be able to tolerate a little bit, have a higher body temperature, but it's totally individual at the end of the day. Totally individual. Question. I'm a new female dom and my partner's a sub. He wants me to be more of an aggressive top and degrade him since I did it as a joke and he liked it. How to gain more confidence to do it. Okay, so congratulations on you and your new partner. That's super exciting in your BDSM journey. I would definitely recommend looking on Amazon for some books on female dominance. I believe Princess Kali has one. I think Midori might have one. I think Lorelei has one. There are lots of options out there if you want to learn more about how to be like a confident female dom. And the knowledge in those books is way more than I can give you in like 2 minutes on a live stream. I'm also not a female dom, so I can't necessarily give that advice. I believe if the MP experience is still here, you can also check out their channel. They're also a female dom, they're a female rigger, and I would recommend looking at them if you want like a good YouTube source to look at where you have a really great example of like a female dom and kind of learning how to gain that confidence. But also remember as well, like, you know, if your style is not like overly aggressive and degrading and that doesn't speak to you, that doesn't fuel you as a top or a dom, you don't have to be that way, right? I think we have to keep in mind when we look at like submissives, for example, we kind of acknowledge that like, okay, well, some littles are no, some submissives are littles, some submissives are pets, some submissives are slaves, some like and I say submissive as like a general like label for S type, like anybody who's on that side of the slash. And we don't necessarily expect them to conform and like change what type of submissive they are for a partner. And I think for doms, we can have this tendency of be like, oh, like adapt your style of dominance to suit what kind of submissive your partner is. But like if you're kind of more of like a gentle mommy type, or you're kind of more of like a Victorian head of the household, like you don't have to be like a super hyper aggressive, hyper feminine, like man hating dom. Like you don't have to do that if you don't want to. If that's not your style, it might be maybe you want to try it, but also you have to honor and acknowledge like what speaks to you as a dom and what gives you power, what makes you enthusiastic about doing it. Because you can kind of like fake it a little bit, right? You can role play, you can pretend to be something that you're not really that into every once in a while. But if that is your main thing, if that's like the thing that you do as the basis for your relationship, that is very quickly going to degrade and make you resent your partner, make you not like BDSM, make you feel really just bad, just bad. And you want to avoid that. So that's my 2 cents. Also, genital size doesn't matter. And if your parts are too big, get a dildo that's the right size. And if your parts are too small, lots of stuff from Bad Dragon that you can attach to your parts to enhance them. Or just use a different, bigger dildo. TBH. Use a harness. Use a strap-on harness. I don't give a fuck. I'm asexual. I don't care. Don't listen to me. I can't give advice about that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, I've never heard a submissive be like, oh, I wish I could be submissive to this person, but like his penis is too small. Like that's never been a conversation I've been a part of. And I would hope that you wouldn't be with someone that was that shallow. And if somebody is just looking for the D, then like they're probably not looking for lifestyle DS. They're probably just looking for a fun hookup that has a little bit of a BDSM flair to it, and you're not really gonna have the same goals necessarily at the end of that. How do you feel about places like a club, or a bar? Sinister in LA. One of my friends went wants to go. IDK, how to feel about it? It seems irresponsible. I've not been to a dungeon yet before, so eh. I mean, it really depends. I don't know anything about Sinister in LA. I want to think it's a swingers club that hosts BDSM things. The LA BDSM community is like hella sketchy though. Like if you watch any of Cat Black. Sorry, totally blanked for a second. If you watch Cat Black's videos, she talks about the LA scene a lot, and it's like, yeah, glad that was not my introduction to BDSM because it kind of seems like a mess. Not to say it's all bad, but it's confusing to navigate. LA is also just kind of weird. This is a weird place. It's got its own flavor, you know? But on principle, I'm not against doing BDSM at a place like a bar or a club. Again, like I've said multiple times, there are 2 venues here that one of them's closed now. I think one of them is reopening soon. And they did have a night every week where I should say, the one that is closed now had a night every week that was BDSM themed. The one that is reopening had a fetish party once a month at the beginning of the month. And the place that I went to, like when I was first in the scene, they had a like BDSM night also like once a week. And I'm not against that. I don't think it's like evil or wrong or no one should ever do it, but it's a different environment. And so I think you need to go into it with different expectations because there is a vastly, vastly different level of safety. There's a vastly different level of like other people are impaired around you, right? You know, the venue has a vested interest in you staying there and buying drinks, not necessarily in keeping you safe. I can feel my throat getting dry and kind of scratchy, so give me a second. I'm gonna go get a glass of water. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. Keep asking questions, and I will be back in a minute. I am probably not going to end this right at 8 o'clock. I feel like we're having a really great conversation. I'd love to keep this going, so don't worry. If you just got here, we have plenty of time to go over more questions. So just a minute. Okay, we're back. We're live. We're hanging out. We're having a good time. Okay. Where was I? I think. Was Bandit on camera? Can you guys see Bandit? 4K Bandit. Oh, yes, Bandit getting a camera. We are doing that. It is happening. Yes, honey, you're going to be on camera. Beautiful girl. It's a beauty. All right, talking to my dog, not answering questions. Okay. So, I was talking about doing BDSM at like clubs and bars. I'm not against the idea. Like, if you look back in our community's history, you know, leather bars were some of the first places we had BDSM clubs and BDSM events, and that was like our safe space to do things. Totally want to respect that history. However, again, it's just different safety, different standards, different accessibility, right? Any random ass vanilla person that can buy a drink can walk into a bar and then stumble into a BDSM scene because they're drunk, not remember it, have a horrible time, and have their consent violated. Like, it's a recipe for consent violation. It's a recipe for just like, if you are very drunk, it is very hard to do BDSM well for a few reasons. Like, as a top, your aim is going to be shitty most of the time. Communication issues are going to be tenfold. If you're bottom, you may throw up, you may pass out, you may not be able to communicate clearly, you may not be able to make decisions you're going to be able to cope with long term. Like, it's a hot mess. It's a hot mess. And typically, when I have gone to BDSM events that happen at clubs, like, it's about getting people in the door, it's about getting people to buy drinks. They don't really care about your safety. They don't really care about like the reputation of the BDSM community. They just want to get people in there. And because of that, they don't vet the people that perform there. They don't vet the people that are teaching shit at their events. And so you get situations where at this like propaganda place, you have this rope top, which when you look at the publicly available history of his photos of rope and his videos of his performances, like you can see there are glaring safety issues that because nobody cared enough, nobody said anything about. Nobody knew enough because this wasn't a fucking BDSM venue first. It was a club that happened to do BDSM at it occasionally. Like that was the problem. But I think, there are environments where it works well. Like there are venues that are like BDSM themed that also happen to be clubs, right? Like Torture Garden. Like the whole thing is that it's like this kinky fetish night and it also happens to be like a bar rave party environment. Personally, I have not had good experiences at bar events. I have not had good experiences at Torture Garden. I have not had good experiences all of the time when I've gone to bars that have kink at them. When I went to a Torture Garden party, I had people touch me multiple times without my consent. When I have gone to parties here in the US, it's been kind of a mixed bag. Some of them really great, super fun dance parties where people I know from the local community like host a munch beforehand. The kink community is very much involved in the organizing of this party. They're very involved. They're aware of who goes there. They're aware of the people that are performing. And then I've gone to other places where that's not the case, and basically the same thing happened as what happened at Torture Garden, and people don't respect boundaries. They think because you look like a weirdo freak, any guy with like a salmon colored polo and khakis can go like, oh, I've always wanted a kinky goth girlfriend, and then they like stroke your hair and pet your ears and grab your tail, and it's like, that is the part that I'm not against. It's just like, it's an environment that does not facilitate safety. It does not facilitate good consent practices. It does not facilitate good communication. And so I wouldn't recommend them really as beginner events. I think they can be a good way to like see people in fetish attire. I think they can be a good way to see people do BDSM, but that BDSM may not be accurate. And the fetish attire may not be representative of somebody's actual kink interests. So I recommend going to like normal, like 100% fully BDSM parties before relying on like clubs as like an access point for things, especially when it's also a swingers club. Now, I personally have to admit that I have a quasi unresolvable bias against swingers that I'm trying to deal with, but I just am like not a fan of like what I would typically label like dominant swinger culture's ideals about like consent and approaching people and just like it's not an environment that I feel very comfortable in. And I'm not saying that swinger events are bad or you should never go to them or they're always dangerous, but for me, like if I knew somewhere was a swinger event, if it was not an event that was 100% ran by independently kinksters, the local kink community, and it just happened to be at a swinger venue, like I wouldn't go to something that was ran by a swinger that was labeled as being BDSM. Like I just wouldn't. I'm just like I've had too many bad experiences. I know too many people that have had bad experiences. I am not in this for sex stuff. Swingers are kind of by definition into it for the sex stuff. Like it's not going to be a good match, personally for someone like me. So that's my 2 cents. Yes, a munch is yeah, like kind of like think about it like meeting plus lunch. It is a informal social gathering where you can meet people in the local community without like doing BDSM or being around people doing BDSM. It's very low pressure. It's a really, really good interaction. If you have a question, ask away. This is not a real upload, by the way. It got published by accident before it was ready, and so I wasn't finished with it yet. I was testing it to make sure it wasn't gonna get like flagged for YouTube for like a community violation or something. Because I don't typically like post pictures of full on shibari in my videos, and I was like worried about YouTube not being okay with that, so I had to test it a little bit beforehand. So the video that came out today was not a re-upload. It was something that I was testing earlier. It got published by mistake, and like this is the actual like final version. Unless I've done something horribly wrong that I haven't caught yet that I can't correct in like a pinned comment. then I might have to republish it. But fingers crossed. And knock on wood. Knock on everything. I won't have to do that. Okay. Next question. Next question. The person dodged my questions about whether or not the place had DMs. I feel like that's a very important factor. Like for me, the difference between like an environment I feel safe with and an environment I don't is like, are there DMs around? If I'm at a house party and it's people I know really, really well, like my friends in the community, then like, okay, we don't need DMs because there's like 10 of us here and we all know each other by name. But if it's any kind of public event, if they're not DMs, like I can, like, if there's no DMs, to me, that's like a party that has BDSM at it, as opposed to like being in a primary like dungeon event. You know, like that's kind of like my tell is like, oh, okay, this is like a club that has BDSM parties at it, but not like that's not their priority. It's not like their function is doing BDSM stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, so somebody answered the earlier question about the stainless steel cuffs. So somebody said that stainless steel shouldn't rust. Like if you have it high quality, that's probably not a problem. Like cop grade, they're probably fine. Yeah, I guess good point. Cops probably wouldn't get equipment that would rust on them because they like being able to restrain criminals. So I guess yeah, fair play, fair play. I think that's probably right. But yeah, I think the internal mechanisms might be an issue, or like the oil in them if it has a hinge, like that could be a problem. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a metal worker, a metalsmith. That's not, I don't do that. Not the right person to ask. But again, if you ask somebody about that in FetLife, I am sure somebody has a very detailed answer they would love to give you. Ba, 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 ba. Hmm. Photoman Williams says FetLife group handcuffs has experts on all handcuff questions. That might be a good place to start if you want to know about that. Your lights are pretty wild. I keep expecting a loudspeaker to blast out of a self-destruction gun. Thank you. I found this light setting by accident and was like, oh, I have to do something with this. I like the cerulean blue with the red just like looked really cool, and I was like, okay, we're doing something with this now. We gotta know. We gotta see how it looks on camera for real. I know they're not gonna be everyone's cup of tea though, so I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I've started modding for my local kink group. We've focused on hypno kink, and I've been involved for about 2 years. Since we're a small subculture, I want to be a role model. Any advice? I think that is great if you want to be a good role model. Um, I just feel like the key thing is like having really robust like ethical boundaries. Like once you step into that role of like being a role model and being sort of a face for your local community and having that degree of power and influence, you gotta be so fucking on top of your shit when it comes to negotiations and the people you play with. Like, if you decide you want to step into that role, like, basically recognize you're like not gonna be in a position where you can like ethically have BDSM relationships with like people that are new to your kink scene because of how influential and powerful you are. Like you could like physically play with them, but morally, ethically, that gets into a gray area of like, well, they're new and they don't know things yet, so they maybe will say yes to things to impress me because I'm so important locally and I could influence their future like kink career and ability to play with people. So it gets like difficult to be able to manage to know like who is going to be a safe person to play with because you have to think like so much more carefully about the people that you decide to do stuff with. So that would be my main thing. Other than that, just like I think educational events are great. Having accessible events, and I mean accessible in terms of like price. I mean accessible in terms of like digital and real life. I mean accessible in terms of like, hey, are you asking if people need an Excel interpreter? Are you asking if people are able to like physically access the building? Is it held in a place that's wheelchair accessible? You know, things like that I think are also important, and having mindfulness around that is really important, especially for such a niche community, because I know a lot of people already feel so isolated and so unable to participate in kink. And if they have a very niche kink and then they can't do that because of all these other reasons, like it makes it even that much harder. So that's kind of my like top of my head advice. I definitely like being really, really like robust with your negotiations, being vocal about admitting mistakes if and when you do, those are going to be the key things. I think those are really important. It's always been very powerful when I have seen examples of people that are kind of big stars that talk about their negotiation process and how they find partners and how they communicate in scenes. And especially if you're doing something that involves like mental BDSM where that is like so intense, that's going to be even more important. Oh, did I say lab partner instead of lab partner? Did I say that? What did I say? Lab partner. If I did, my nose is like really stuffy right now for some reason. I'm not happy about it, but like I can, there's like got a lot of stuff going on back there, and it's kind of messing with me a little bit. You do if you actually have emojis. So I found this out very recently. I don't know if it works on all computers, but for me, if I right click in the chat box, if you go to the very top, like it opens up, you know, copy, paste, spell check, whatever. The very, very top one, which is the window key plus period on my computer, you actually get this whole Dropbox of emojis. It's amazing. It's the best thing like ever. I'm about to pop in some horse emojis in the chat as a demonstration. I It's not gonna make any sense. Just go with it. I like the pony emoji. It was there. Are you still collared? Um, I don't know. What do you think? Does it look like I am? Does it look like I'm wearing a collar right now? What do you think? Guess. Just I'm curious. Oh my god, the cow emoji is so cute. It's so mimi. Ah, so cute. It looks like a Harvest Moon cow face. It's so cute. To be honest though, I'm like not even really a horse girl. I'm more like a farm girl. Like I just like cows a lot and ducks. And horses are like part of that, but like cows and ducks though, like mostly, to be honest. And bunnies. Oh my gosh, and bunnies. If you had to choose, what are the top 3 misconceptions about the BDSM community that annoy you the most? For me, it's probably 1, BDSM is always sexual, 2, kinky people are troubled, and 3, DDLG is pedophilia. I'm gonna say that I agree with all those. Those are all on my list. In addition to those ones, I will also say I am annoyed sort of by the ideas that you know, cliches like, you know, submissives are really the one that have all the power. That one gets under my skin. I don't like that one. Um that brats are bad submissives or not really submissives at all. And Oh, they're all people that like everyone in the BDSM community is polyamorous. That's like the other one. That's like a very niche one. That one in particular gets me because it's definitely not true. Definitely not the case. Mm. Um, Elmendor asked, "Do you feel DOMs, especially new ones, can be pressured by experienced subs to do kinks they may or may not be comfortable with?" Oh, absolutely. That is a great point. That totally happens. I know for sure. And like, I don't think people mean to do this. I think people have this idea that like manipulation and like consent issues come from this place of like maniacal manipulation tactics where the person is aware they're doing it. To be honest, I think a lot of the time that pressure like they don't realize that what they're doing is a bad thing. They're like, "Oh, I really want to do rope bondage, and rope bondage would be so amazing. Can you please do this with me?" And they basically like big doll eyes, like kind of guilt the dom into doing something they're not comfortable with. And on the dom side, because there is this like really strong pressure to have this high skill level, to know what you're doing, to be confident, to basically be open to whatever, to try everything once, that can definitely create something where DOMs are feeling pressure to do stuff that they really don't want to do. And what can happen is they can sit there and go, well, like, that doesn't really seem like my thing. I'm not super comfortable with that, but like they seem really into it and maybe I'll be into it. So should just try it. And shouldn't it make my submissive happy? And like, am I violating their consent? Like, is that me manipulating? Like, it gets really weird mentally. So, not to ramble on too much about it, but yes, I definitely do think that DOMs, especially new ones, can be pressured to do things that they may not really be into for the sake of their submissive. And in fact, on Patreon last night, we watched a video that was from what I will describe as a like sex educator tantra coach channel where it's like middle-aged white women selling jade yoni eggs to like other middle-aged white women, and she put out this video really recently that was about like the power of subspace, and like the whole video is like, imagine the stereotype of like actually the submissives are really one with all the power, but like dial up to 11. Like literally, she describes doing BDSM as like the Dom is like an excellent Dom is there to provide a service to you as the submissive, and their goal, their reason for being a Dom should be with providing you with a good time. And I understand the intention. I understand the whole concept of like it not being a selfish thing, about it being something where you're both trying to have a good time with the other person. But they took us in this like totally other extreme direction where they said that so many times in the video where the end point was basically like the Dom satisfaction really comes from being able to serve you as the submissive. And it's that kind of mentality that creates this problem where people expect Doms are okay with doing anything. And it's up to the submissive to just ask for what they want and whatever it is they're gonna get. Not true. Sorry, not everyone is into everything, including Toms. Who would have guessed? They're also people. I am on FetLife. You can join my FetLife at the $5 and above tier on my Patreon. Ooh la la. Okay, so update. It is somehow hotter in here by a whole degree, by like a whole ass degree. It's blowing cold air in here. I feel like just all my technology is like overwhelming my fan right now. So, um, I kind of don't want it to get into the 90s in my room. So, we're going to say 10 more minutes and then we're going to wrap up. How's that sound? Sound good? Cool. You have no choice. I am the Dom. I am the Dom of my YouTube chat. I think I'm funny sometimes, okay? I think I'm funny sometimes. You are all commanded to laugh. Okay, where am I in the questions and the answers and blah blah blah. I want to go to my, oh, there we go. There we go. Why would I be lying? What did I lie about? Oh, are you talking? Is this like talking about the person that's like, I go to this venue and I know it's not really a club and it's a BDSM thing? I mean, listen, people can perceive things however they want to perceive things. Feelings are valid, but feelings are not facts. That's it's a little pro psychological tip for you there. Mm. Uh, Luong Vivian asked, "Hi Evie, just joined the stream, and I wanted to ask, what would your advice be for a sub who just started to explore bondage without a partner? Thank you." So I would really recommend, you can still go to classes, you can still go to rope meetups, you can go to rope jams, you can still do all that stuff. You don't need a partner, and in fact, there are a lot of rope bondage groups, especially if you are a female person, you are non-binary. There's something called Hitchin' Bitches, which has a lot of different chapters all over the US and in Europe as well, where the point is to have a friendly space for things like self-tying. It's not only self-tying, but I find it is like 50-50 that versus like 80-20, where like self-tying's the 20%. I recommended this earlier in the video. Tons of great online resources for self-tying. Shay Tiziano, who I've talked about before, actually has a book called Tying and Flying, where she talks about self-tying and self-tying for suspension. She also has a Vimeo account that has a lot of free tutorials for self-tying. You can also look at places like Shibari Study, The Duchy, Crash Restraint. Lots of tutorials that offer a lot of really great tools for learning how to do bondage on yourself or just by yourself, even if you do want to tie with someone in the future. Reading books, taking online classes. FetLife has a lot of resources as well. So many good things out there if you want to start in that journey. But just starting with the very basics, learning basic rope handling, getting yourself a pair of safety shears, learning single column ties, then double column ties, and practicing and practicing and practicing. That's going to be what keeps everything together. Okay, so we have a super chat from Gino. Thank you so much. They say, how can I find lunch like at a restaurant in LA? FetLife didn't help because all that came up was DomCon. So I don't give specific advice about particular munches or dungeons or things in local areas because 99.5% of the time I don't live there and I don't go to events there consistently. And even if I did, this is YouTube, this is public. I cannot control who sees this. And munches, even though they may be advertised on FetLife, kind of vanilla people showing up for a photo op or for TikTok or whatever. And so they don't typically advertise those addresses in like a very well-known public place. You're in LA, that's a really, really big community. So I understand there may be a lot of events to sort through. I want to ask, maybe there's even a Facebook page. Like people have I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know. But from my understanding, there are like kinky Facebook groups, right? Like you can, if there's like an LA kinky Facebook group, you could also check on there as well. But I'll just look really quickly, just to see if maybe you're looking in the right place. Let's see, events. I want to look in. So I went on FetLife. I went over to events. I am changing my location to Los Angeles, California. I'm looking within a 25-mile radius, and I'm looking at all events. Okay, we got gangbangs. We got another gangbang. We got a different gangbang. got a couples meetup. We got a carnival party. We got a beach walk. Okay, there is an event, and I can see one that's tomorrow in Santa Ana. Pretty sure that one looks like a munch. That's at capacity, though. Okay, I found another one that's in LA. That's a different munch. Says vaccinated people only. So it seems like there are a couple that pop up, once you get past the gangbangs, which is just not smart of being on FetLife. You just have to laugh about it. You can even, if there's a lot of events, you can literally just Control F and then search munch. And doing that, I come up with 10 hits for munch. And they're all within the next week. There's ones in Irvine, there's ones in Culver, there's ones in Belmont Shore, there's ones in Santa Ana. There's 2 in LA, there's one on the west side, there's one in West Hollywood. there are a lot of options for munches in LA. So if maybe you were searching, you know, when you go to FetLife, look at the tabs, go to the tab that says event, and search there. Make sure your location is set to Los Angeles, and then go from there. Like DomCon, if you just Google stuff, like that's really big. It's coming up soon. That's going to be what pops up. But definitely, there are like a lot of stuff in LA. Like I'm kind of jealous. Like the gangbangs I could do without, but like there's like 7 different munches happening and like a beach walk. Like I'd go walk on the beach with some kinky people. I want to. That sounds fun. Why can't I do a beach walk? Jealous. So jealous. Okay. 5 more minutes. Let's get to another question. Blah blah blah. Let's see. So as someone who is new to bondage, is the way to explore safely binding around the breast with rope, would you suggest tape? Oh, definitely. So there are a lot of chest harnesses, and you say like ties around the rope. So I will say there is kind of this like urban legend that people believe that doing bondage around breast tissue may be linked to breast cancer. That is an extrapolation from a study that was done on a correlation with car accidents involving seat belts across the chest and future incidences of breast cancer. That is definitely extrapolation. It is definitely not a direct correlation. But actually, typically, if you want to do stuff around the chest, the easiest thing to do that's like the hardest to fuck up, don't involve the hands at all. You can there are so many tutorials for very simple chest harnesses, which is basically a pass under and a pass over, a pass over. Da da da. Okay, little Jewish joke in there. And you know, a wrap over the top of the rope, and then it's tied in the back. So definitely lots of ways to do that. Some people actually do, like if you're looking for something that's like constrictive around the breasts, there are definitely it's more like a Western bondage thing, but I know there are also like shibari informed ties that do things like this as well, where it is actually like binding into the breast tissue. I have very small little boobies, so like I can't do stuff like that. It's not gonna happen. But like if you have a lot of breast tissue, definitely things out there for that. It can cause circulation restriction, that can cause discomfort. But if you're on like kink.com, if you're on things like that, like water bondage, whatever, there are definitely photos and videos where you see stuff like that. It is a thing. Circulation restriction on its own is not necessarily a danger. The problem primarily comes from if it's very, very long term and if it's causing nerve impingement. Those are the main things you got to worry about, but there are tons of tutorials, tons of options out there, and some people are really into that. You can also do things like bondage tape. You could also do things like you know like the boob tape they make for like wearing under dresses, so you know you kind of make sure all the things are in the right place and it's not going to show in your dress. You can use tape like that that's like meant to be adhered to the skin. That's not even like duct tape or anything. And you can try that as well if you want to have a sense of like what that restriction feels like. But yeah, the point being is like the safety issues that come from a lot of chest harnesses don't actually come from the chest. It comes from being on the arms. And that's the thing you want to be really, really careful of, which is why I don't really do a lot of TKs in suspension. Just because it's like, I got, like, my hands are my job. Like, if I don't have my hands, I can't edit, I can't write, I can't answer emails. Like, I don't have any employees. I don't have, you know, I don't work for a company. I don't get paid time off. I don't have sick leave. Like, I'm screwed. Like, if I get wrist drop, I am completely fucked, and like not in a fun way. So, um, there's that on that. Oh, thank you so much. No question. Just sending a super chat because I found this stream to be rather informative and it was nice to learn some new information. Thank you so much, Michael. Glad you enjoyed things. Okay. Um, I am gonna answer one more question. And then we're gonna move. Oh, okay. We have one from Ellie. Oh, thank you so much. Hi, Evie. I love all that you do for the community. I was wondering, do you have any suggestions for buying kink fetish clothes on a budget? I do. Personally, I buy a lot of my clothes on like Mercari or Poshmark. And you can pretty much always get a discount if you make an offer on clothing. There is so much secondhand Kill Star, Dolls Kill, Lip Service, just general black clothing. Like, go to Mercari and search for like goth clothing, PVC, whatever. So much stuff up there. And depending on what size you are, you know that it's going to be more or less accessible. You could also go thrift shopping. You could look for punk clothes that you can kind of upcycle. And you know, for me, I kind of my like particular style of like fetish clothing is like 90s fetish goth. Like that's kind of my vibe. So I tend to go for more stuff like that. You can also do things like, you know, fishnets are super cheap, ripped up tights, super cheap. You know, it's a lot of like very affordable PVC. There are options on Etsy, but you know, typically like getting secondhand clothing from places like Poshmark and places like Mercari, like that's pretty much how I've like gotten like I don't know, 75% of my new clothing has been from secondhand retail places. And also, like, at least in my community, we do clothing swaps all the time. Like, especially before COVID, like, at least every 6 months, somebody would organize a clothing swap and we would swap out outfits, we would swap out kink gear, we would get clothes from each other, we'd get belts, shoes, whatever, tons of things. So, that's my advice. But like really just like anything black. Like if you want to like just put holes in black things to be honest and give them cool designs and bleach stuff, like you have tons of options if you want to go kind of a DIY route. If you want to go in kind of that like fetish goth punk direction, that's kind of your aesthetic. But otherwise, like secondhand places are definitely going to be your friend. But I know that for everyone, it's not going to be accessible because maybe their size isn't really common or things like that. But those are the best options that I have that I find work for me. Although usually I wear an extra small or a zero, and that can be difficult to find. Like, if you are a medium, like Poshmark and Mercari is your fucking oyster. Like, you're gonna have so much good stuff on there. But if you're on the far end either way, it's gonna be a lot more difficult. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Okay, I know I keep saying one more question, but like I'm really loving it. And we're having a great time. So I kind of just want to like just want to keep going. Um, yes, definitely. We love the MP experience. Definitely check out their channel. Also definitely like watch their videos talking about the Dallas Bondage Expo because that shit's fucking bananas. And like I gotta say, like I thought the MP experience just like disappeared off the internet. And I was like, where'd she go? She's been posting. And then I realized it was because YouTube stopped putting her in my subscription box, and I didn't think to double check. And then I found out all this shit was going on with the bondage experience that I haven't even been able to process because of Marilyn Manson. And then this fucking bullshit happening that I talked about in the video that just came out, and like, and then the Franklin Buck, and like all this other. I just don't have time. I do not have time for the volume of bullshit that happens, and it makes me so mad. It makes me so upset that there's so much of it all of the time. Anyways, I'm gonna just collect myself here. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Feel like I any tips or rope bottoms who can't do TK position with arms behind the back? It's so prevalent. There are lots of alternative positions for a TK. You can do a low hand in the back. You can do a rifle tie. You don't have to involve the arms at all. Like you can do, if you want to involve the arms, you can do a strappado. You can do single columns around the wrists, or I guess that would be a double column. Sorry, if you want, or like you could do single columns around the wrists. Probably gonna do a double column with like both together, right? If you want to have the arms bound, there are other ways to do it that aren't necessarily going to get into the nervy area of the rope, but I've been just fine telling people that like I don't suspend from TKs. Like very few people have ever had an issue with that. Like they're like, okay, yeah, we'll just do something else. and it's fine. It's not even a big deal. So, you look up like hands-free chest harness, go to the Shibari study. Again, they have tons of options for chest harnesses that have shoulder straps, that have no hands, that have other alternative positions that involve the hands that aren't box ties. Lots of things out there. Lots of things out there. I was gonna say I can't wait for a Bandito Camino. Well, we can have beat a Bandito Camino. Oh my god, she's never mind. That girl is out. She is sleeping. She is so sleeping. I'm gonna take a picture. You guys can see my little sleepy fluffy baby. She had a bath a couple days ago, and she's like maximum fluffiness right now. Okay, you guys want to like see my dog, and I guess my slippers, I suppose. Let's see. Here we go. There she is. She is. I was like, oh no, she might not be doing well, but I can see she's like, she has this little look in her eye she gets when she's like deeply sleeping, where there's like a little bit of a smile. It's very cute. Yeah, she's out. She's out. She's sleeping, having a great time in dreamland. You've got a lot of very angry opinions today. Where have you been angry? I'm passionate, and I guess sometimes people could mistake that as anger. I just don't want people to get hurt. I guess. What was got angry? She does look like a loaf of bread. It's true. Um. Ooh, okay, so important note about Sinister, which was the club in LA we talked about earlier. Michael says that if I recall correctly, Sinister had an issue a couple years back with the help's boundaries not being observed properly. Food for thought, something to consider. Of course, over the years, management can change, policies can change, clientele can change. That can all be something that can change over time for sure. So we don't want to paint with a broad brush, but yeah. Not wanting people to get hurt in my Christian home. Exactly. My very Christian laser light show home. Exactly. Exactly. You should have black nails more. I should. I took a break from painting my nails for a long time because I noticed my nails were getting kind of damaged, and they're doing better now. They're pretty strong. I did like rip my thumbnail a little bit, so I'm like waiting for that to grow out before I repaint them again. But I got a bunch of new colors. I got like a really dark red burgundy. I got like a really deep eggplant. I got a lime green. Like I found a new brand of vegan nail polish I really like. It's called Nailtopia. It's at Ulta. It is a little expensive. It's $10 a bottle. But I got it when it was buy one get one half off. So I got two colors. So it was $15 for two. And then I got one color that was like randomly on sale for $5 also. And I was like, oh, bonus. Okay. So it's a little expensive, but I tried Essie, OPI, Etsy nail polishes, like everything. And it sets, it's good. It takes a long time before it chips. Like it's good quality, okay? I don't have to literally repaint my nails every other day when I use that nail polish. It was very good. Very worth it. Mm. Yeah, and then craft mannequins can have craft stores can have mannequins that you can use for rope, definitely. Or if you look at I don't know, I'm forgetting the word for it, but like full size mannequins like you would use for pattern making or for dressmaking, those can be really good as well if you have the space for it where you live. For practicing if you want to practice on other people and not just on you. Okay, so I'm just gonna go right at the bottom here, and I think we're gonna wrap up now because I am hungry. I would like to eat food. Thank you guys so much for being here. I think we learned a lot of cool stuff today. I like the way you said hi to Bandit a few weeks ago. I don't know what you mean. I just like I look at her and I love her. She's so fluffy. But she's sleeping. Actually, her eyes are open and she's like staring at me right now. So I think I woke her up. But I love her. She's the best. Oh, yeah, yeah. The guide to bottoming that Clover wrote. Oh, yeah. Great resource. Great resource for sure. Ah, shibari and kambaku are not used the same way as we do in the US. Like, Japanese riggers think it's funny that we use the word shibari as a thing. That is a good point. I forgot to mention that. Like, definitely, even if the language is Japanese, like the way that we use terminology between Japan and the US, even when it's like shibari, is like totally different linguistically. Like, it is like it's one of those things, and like their approach to how they do scenes and everything is very different. Um, or they even like consider them to be BDSM or not, or consider it to be scenes or not. Like it's all its own whole own world over there. Whole own world over there. But yeah, I mean, there's it's called Kinbaku Today. Is that the website? Oh, let me check. There's definitely like even if you're not on FetLife, there are definitely a lot of ways to yeah. It's Kinbaku Today. It's sort of like an online I don't know if journalist thing is the right word, but they have a lot of good reviews of videos. They have a lot of interviews. They have book reviews. A lot of articles interviewing like traditional like shibari masters. They have one actually referencing Yukumura Sensei. They do have a recent article that came out in March after his passing where they talk about sort of the evolution of like Yukumura's like rope. Definitely worth a read. But yeah, like definitely there's a lot of stuff on there if what you are into is shibari, a lot of like historical stuff, really really great things and like yeah, I mean in the US like we kind of use shibari and kabaku interchangeably, but it's definitely not that way in Japan. Totally different ball game. Totally different ball game. Yes, good point. See, this is the problem when I do live streams is like there's so many like extra little points that I forget I should add in for because I realize it's like not obvious to everyone. Yes, definitely, absolutely. When you're using a mannequin to practice a tie, definitely remember that like it is there so you can like practice a pattern on like somebody's body that's not yours. Like it is very hard to practice like a complicated hands-free chest harness on your own body and like turning to look in a mirror to see how the back looks and everything else. Having a mannequin is there for like practicing the repetition of like the pattern of a tie and like knowing the steps of something. But the important part is to like you have to be able to do it on actual humans and like adjust to individual people's like own anatomy. Like when I do Agura ties, for example, I have a freaking like long femur, okay? I have literally had people tell me in classes that like they're like, wow, you have a freakishly long femur. And like I do. Like my legs are like 80% femur. And so because of that, the way that the Agura is constructed has to change to accommodate for how like weirdly long my legs are. And if you were to practice only tying Aguras on a perfectly proportional mannequin, like you wouldn't know what to do to be able to modify something to work for my individual body. So yes, definitely it is something where you have to make adjustments. If your person is built like a rectangle versus like a super hourglass versus somebody who's like a size 13 versus a size 00, all of that, so much versatility in terms of like flexibility, range of motion, comfort level, previous injury history, medical history, like so many factors go into it. And the mannequin is just that little bit of a helpful tool. And like it's very similar. Like for example, when you're practicing totally different thing, play piercing, right? When you're practicing play piercing, you know, piercing through, a chicken breast or like agar, like something that that you typically use to practice like doing needles on. Yes, that can be helpful. However, everybody's skin is different, their skin condition is different, how old they are, how hydrated they are, what needles you're using, what kind of sensation they want to have. It can kind of help you learn the technique and get the repetition in, but it's not going to be the same as like practicing on a real person or on yourself. So, yeah. Food for thought, lots of nuance, lots of things to keep in mind. This is a complicated thing. It is a dangerous thing, but it's fun. And ultimately, that is what we are here to do, is to have fun and stay safe at the same time. Yes, definitely. Thank you. So I just want to highlight, um, so can you talk about face rope? Face rope's fine. I'm personally into like rope in my mouth. Which is one of the many reasons I like Posh is that you can wash it. And so I'm not worried about getting like if that rope you use in your kit that you didn't wash was just somebody's hip harness and I have to their sweaty like thigh rope is not going to be in my mouth. Like I'm not into that. So I like Posh because I can wash it and so I can have it be around my face, I can have it be around my whatever. And I want to highlight this too. So I talked about neck rope a little bit in the video. And I am always talking from a perspective of like, what is the safest possible policy for like playing with a new person? And like, neck rope is controversial. Some people are like, again, never ever do it, too dangerous, don't go there. I have been to multiple classes where the whole fucking point is that, like, ooh, if you tie the chest harness this way, like I took a class, I think it was from Lizard, where we talked about this, where like it's basically like using a chest harness to make breath restriction happen, or how to do neck rope, or like there are tools to do that. You can do them in a safer, risk informed way. And it's hot and it's fun. And like literally, the Duchy and their beginner column for the rope bondage tutorials has like a rope collar as like one of the first things you can learn how to do. So there are definitely ways to do rope around the neck, rope around the face, rope in the mouth, micro bondage around the face, micro bondage around the mouth, totally all things. But the thing is, you gotta negotiate for that shit. You gotta be aware of what you're doing. And if you think that taking rope from a collapsed chest harness and then turning that shit into neck rope is a smart idea and has no problems because that was what you pre-planned for the performance that now you are not letting go of because you had a malfunction. That's very different from a well-executed scene where you have practiced this and you know what you're doing, and it's not like in a scenario where you probably should have been ending the scene and at least retying the chest harness. But you didn't do that because you had too much of an ego. Yes. So very last thing, MP Experience said that if you are somebody that's in LA and you're looking for events, if you're a BIPOC person or BIPOC or person of color, you should reach out to them because they can connect you with smaller groups and safer spaces. LA, California, Texas, like bigger communities, there are a lot of events and it's very hard to find the good ones. So definitely, if you're looking for that safer space and you're BIPOC, BIPOC, like go there, talk to them, they will hook you up. Again, we can't publicly name things because all the reasons I said before, but yeah, it's having that connection is good. Anyways, I feel like I've offered all clarifications and all additional points that I was kind of hoping to make. I hope you all enjoyed this and learned something and had a fun time. I think we got to a lot of good things, got a lot of good questions. Yeah, if you guys are still watching this, I would really love it if you all would share the video that I did talking about this rope bondage incident because YouTube is like really not loving that video in terms of age restriction and demonetization and all of that. I think this is a really important conversation. So if you have like a kinky Facebook page or group you run or fucking Telegram chat or Discord chat that's kinky or rope bondage related, like please share it. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. I would love to just have this be something where we can all have a little bit of a teachable moment from what is a sad situation and a dangerous one as well. So thank you all so much. I hope you all are having a great evening. Stay safe, drink water, and question the shit out of people that say they have 15 years of experience doing rope bondage. If somebody tells you, I've been doing true Kimbaku Shibari for 15 years and I trained under Master K in Mount Fuji and blah blah blah. Don't take their shit for face value. Don't just believe because they are a house rigger and work at a club, they know what they're doing. If anything, walk away from this being skeptical and not leaping into things too quickly. Yes, thank you all so much. Again, really great live stream, and I will talk to you all again very soon. Actually, I have a video coming out about rope bondage safety for bottoms. That is going to be out on Sunday. That's going to be out on Sunday. It's going to be a really good one. I think it's kind of a follow-up to the video I posted today, and I hope that's going to kind of round out our education for this conversation and just kind of put an end note on things. Again, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you guys being here and asking questions, and I will talk to you again very soon.